afternoon. I won't tell you who I am in terms of my day job. I am known as Liepollo Pheko. That is what my parents called me. I have chosen to call myself a love child of audacity and of hope. And I have decided that I'm a child of the soil and a woman on a mission. And I think for the purposes of this day's talk, this chit-chat we're gonna have, that is probably sufficient. So I locate myself within struggle. I locate myself within action. I locate myself as a citizen of this planet, and I try and figure out what that means all the time. And I locate myself as a person who lives to breathe and breathes to live, because I think that that is what the purpose of life is. When we talk about the struggles, especially by women, we often forget that these struggles come at a cost. We always talk about Maya Angelou and we phenomenalize and Maya Angelize everything. Yeah. And still I rise. Yeah. But why did she fall? Phenomenal woman. But you know what it costs to be phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And struggle has a cost. In order to rise, you must fall. You must be bruised. You must be battered. And it takes a heck of a lot of resilience and strength to get back up. But we forget that because we Maya Angelize everything. And I often say that these struggles need to be read within much more complexity. We need to think about the economic, the social, the cultural, the religious, the everything, because we live to breathe and we breathe to live. And instead we've been talking about these things and footnoting them. And we forget that these are revolutionary moments. Everything that we do is a revolution. Every step that we take is revolutionary. Everything that we are is an act of resistance and an act of defiance. And I'll give an example. August 1956, a lot of women marched, tons of them. A few of them are known, a few of them. Many of them are unknown, most of them. And we've turned that into a march to union buildings with people with babies on their backs. And we have turned it into a soundbite. And it's a thing that we commemorate, but we forget that it wasn't a single narrative. And I'm reminded by what Audre Lorde says. She says there is no such a thing as a single issue struggle, because we do not live our lives with single issues. We live with multiple issues. And I'm reminded by Adichie Ngozi. We know her, we like her. She did one of these. When she talks about start the story with the failure of the African state and not with the colonial creation of the African state, you have an entirely different story. You have multiple narratives, many, many narratives. And I think the core of active citizenship is this. It is the resistance that we have to undertake, not the permission to enter. It is the insistence of being. The insistence of being. This feeling has found profound expression in my life and in the lives of many people that I encounter. And we need to think about the integrity of womanhood, the integrity of personhood, the integrity of citizenship. Especially because so much is demanded of us and so much is expected of us, and yet we don't expect to fall down and be bruised. We're just called to strike a rock and told that if you strike a rock, you strike a woman. Rocks don't bleed, don't strike me. Rocks don't crack, don't strike me. Skantlapa, I'll get you. And rocks don't talk back, don't try me. I'll let that percolate. But on a serious note, there was a time in this country when so-called native women, African women, they were the ones who marched. And I think we've become rather courteous and polite. Because we're not called native anymore, we're Africans. But at the times when we've got to go native. Sistren! Get native! Get down! We have got to get native. And I'll tell you why we've got to get native. Polite women, polite people don't achieve anything. Courtesy doesn't bode well for transformation. Keeping it down, speaking in whispers, has never, ever been the most effective way to build blocks of revolutions, whether in our houses, in our relationships, in our health, in our bodies, in our politics, in our education spaces. Whispers have never, ever brought down roads, brought down institutions, brought down apartheid, brought down the slave trade, brought down colonialism. Whispers don't do us any good when we walk into boardrooms and we're the only women in the room. Whispers, politeness, do nothing. So we have to ask ourselves, behind the soundbite and the Maya Angelou narrative, what is it that we stand for? What keeps us standing? What is it that we're signing up for every single day? Because I think every day we sign up for something or other. We sign up when our kids wake us up on Sunday morning and like, Mommy, Mommy. And it's always on Sunday morning at 6 in the morning, never on Tuesday, never on a Thursday, usually Sunday morning. Mommy, Mommy. We sign up for something or other, okay? Like Mikey Ije Las. And there's a cost to the sound bite. And there's a cost to signing up. There's the cost of being ostracized. There is the cost of being shamed, the veil of shame. There is the hazard of rejection and the loneliness of being a visionary. Being a path breaker is thirsty work. The movements against colonialism, the movements for the suffrage, for the vote, the spaces for education, the right to enter any work or political terrain, and the right to be treated right. They're not popular, they're not immediate, and they're never easy. It's so easy for us to wake up once every few years, tick in a box, choose the party of your choice. 100 years ago, that was a life or death thing in many parts, anywhere in the world. 50 years ago, it was a life or death thing still for women. 20 years ago, 21 years ago in this country, only it became the real thing. What a price. I can't even get over people who decide to go into the mall instead of going to be active and put that tick in that box. When I think about the cost of audacity, it amazes me. And despite of all of these risks, millions of people around the world sign up, knowingly or unknowingly. Millions of women across the world sign up and say, I am going to do this. I'm going to fight against church dogma. I'm going to fight against new imperialisms. I'm going to fight against the people who create red high heels that I can't walk in. But I wear them because they look good. I'm going to fight against society's expectations. I'm going to fight against legal frameworks. Millions of people sign up every day. And I think it's unbecoming. And if I can use a long word on a Friday afternoon, reprehensible. To denude them of their revolutionary core. To denude them of the courage that was behind them. To reduce them to a soundbite that says, Malibongwe. Don't thank me. Respect me. I always say that the many nameless have paved a way for us to be blameless. The nameless who stood behind Bolilian Ngoe, the nameless who stood behind Martin Luther King, the nameless who stood behind Nyerere, the nameless who stood behind Mother Teresa. She wasn't the only nun, but there were so many nameless who we don't think about, who we don't consider. And when I say the blameless, I don't speak of blameless in the context of being people who are perfect. I speak of the virtue that the nameless have given us to continue to excavate the souls of our being. That's what it means to be blameless. To be blameless enough to see beyond the mundane daily circumstances. To be blameless enough to see beyond me, myself, my house, my car alarm, my missing remote. To be blameless enough to see that history is today and that we have an obligation to make different kinds of history every single day. And if we forget to remember the nameless, we're no longer blameless. We are shameless. We are thankless, undeserving of every mantle they fought so hard for us to wear with such careless disregard sometimes. It's quiet in here. And I'll give another example. During the Chilean Revolution, ages ago, some dude, Pinochet, had everybody quiet, silenced. And there was this thing that many women did, some of us might be aware. They wove, they sewed, because he couldn't speak without risk. He couldn't even do this stuff without risk. But they refused to disappear into the mundaneness of the brutality. They refused to be quiet. Instead, they sewed. And in everything they sewed, they said something. They spoke about a brutality. Every little patch was in memory of a missing child, a lost one, a soldier, a loved one. Every single patchwork represented a day longer of this silence. And eventually, these tapestries, which were known as arpilleras, I hope, they began to represent the history of struggle in Chile. And I have to ask us, what is our tapestry? What are we weaving today? What are we weaving today that helps us to stand defiant? That helps us to be resilient despite everything that we see around us? We cannot be vanished unless we give permission to disappear. And we cannot sleepwalk through this life and all of its circumstances, walking around with our eyes wide shut. It's not an option. No matter how heavy our mascara is, it is not an option. We have to weave a tapestry because this planet and its many hardships deserve a tapestry of our words, of our remembrance, of our thoughts, of our concerns, of our wishes, of our aspirations. So historians are still continuing to talk about, oh, come on. Okay, this is the less elegant option, but it's the one that's gonna work. Historians are continuing to talk about the things that have been, the people who have come, and the ones that passed by. And this really takes us to all kinds of places. I like going places, physically, mentally, educationally, everywhere. So there are people in Nigeria who are still mytholizing people like Nana Asamau and Amina. And in Morocco, there's a woman whom I love called Fatima bint Mohammed Ben Feheri. Long name, but with a huge accomplishment. She is the founder of the ancient University of Karawin at Fez in Morocco, possibly the first university of the modern era. And this isn't just about poetic value. This is about inspiring us above what we think is possible today. And we need to think about the kinds of agencies and activisms that can take us to the places where we feel we are able to create our own monuments. Not for our sakes, not because we want to have people with our faces all over them dancing around at airports like some of our leaders. None of that. But because it's so critical that we understand that there's always something bigger and something more. Maybe the thought of Joan of Arc leading the army is our daily battle cry at the age of 16. Maybe the thought of the children of June 16, 1976 is our daily battle cry. And though it's tempting to airbrush and to Photoshop the battlefields under false solidarity and assume sorority and fraternity, there are many who walk beside us who are not always with us. But that's not as important as being with ourselves. I'm not as worried about them as I am with being at the center of where I need to be walking. So the women's movement, or any other movement or space, is probably better described as a tapestry of resistance. It's a movement of the angry, the fed up, the hopeful, the optimistic, the audacious. And we don't need to box any of this. We should just recall, we should just honor, and we should just valorize. Being a pathbreaker is agony. Marie Curie was exposed to radiation, which killed her, so that we wouldn't have to die. How many of us have heard of the Little Rock Nine? Okay. So Little Rock Nine are these, who's heard of the civil rights movement? And the Jim Crow, and the American South, and black toilets and white toilets and restaurants and all of that. So the Little Rock Nine were a group of young people who were the first to enter a desegregated school. And you might have seen the posters of these little kids being accompanied by the National Guard into the school. So they're the Little Rock Nine. And we always talk about the Little Rock Nine. Well, I talk about the Little Rock Nine because I think they're amazing. The point is, out of the Little Rock Nine, only one of them graduated. Okay? The rest of them were daily given abuse, tripped up. One of the Little Rock Nine, the little girls, had acid thrown into her eyes. She left after a week. Only one of them graduated. And that's the cost of being a pathbreaker. And now today we go to school wherever we want to, or not. Drop out whenever we want to, or not. But that was the cost that was paid. So I'll close with Audre Lorde's, who says this. She says, when you're hungry, learn to eat whatever sustains you until morning. Do not be misled by details simply because you live them. Don't pretend to convenient beliefs, even when they're righteous. You'll never be able to defend your city while shouting if you only defend while whispering. It has to be done. It has to be done daily, regularly. It's life, it's death. Let's sign up, ladies. Sign up.